Y ahora cerramos este bloque con Nicolas Caradot, que es el líder del grupo Smart City and Infrastructure, también en el KWB.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. What do I press? Like this. Perfect. Yeah, so I'm working like Wolfgang in KWB. KWB, it's a complex German acronym for Kompetenzcenter for water. So we are an applied research center. We work all along the urban water cycle. So we have department working on groundwater management, one on water treatment. With Wolfgang, we are working in the department on urban systems. One of the main activity we have there is to investigate potential and risk of digitalization for the water sectors. So we have a lot of different projects. It's often about using sensors, model, AIs for the water sector and try to understand better where is the potential, where are the benefits or the risk of this kind of application. Here I'm not going to present really in detail how Berlin Water Utility, which is one of our shareholders, is working on the cybersecurity, what are the main risks or what are the measures they put in place. It's more about what are the trends and the evolutions that we see in the water sector that are being discussed Germany or in the projects we are working on, and try to identify what are emerging risks or future risks we have to address. Yeah. So the start, it has been a bit discussed in the past. There are a lot of challenges that we will need to address in the future. We have climate change that is putting our network under pressure. Precipitation patterns are changing. We have aging infrastructures. Our drinking water or sewer networks can be more than 100 years old. So now we are not really in the era to construct them, but more to address the challenge to maintain them and to replace them. And then we have the issue of staff shortage. It's also been presented several times before. There are some studies that say that we have 30 to 50% of the staff of water utilities that are going to be renewed in the next 10 years. So it creates a lot of questions on who is going to work there, which kind of profile do we need, and how are we going to maintain the know-how that we have now today in the utility. And this is where digitalization can help. So digital tools can help to optimize, to control, or just to understand how our water or sewer network and infrastructures are working. And then AI can also help to increase the performance or the resilience of these infrastructures with all the challenges that I mentioned before. On the other hand, it's also create new exposures. So the fact of using IoT, of using sensors, of using AI, we have new layers of exposures and new vulnerability. So it can be a change, but it's also a risk. So we already heard before, and also in the introductions, like which kind of attacks can happen in the water sector. Those issues where we can change, for example, the water quality, or we could address directly the pumps or the functioning of the treatment plants. The issue of ransomware, where we have to pay at the end to get bad access just to our data or to the functioning of our network. And this is just what we know, because there are many studies that outline the fact that a lot of incidents are underreported or not reported at all. We don't even know that they are there just because the utility do not want to damage their reputation, and even if there might be some obligation at national or international level to declare it, a lot of this can happen and is not really well known. So in terms of trends like these main evolutions that I was mentioning before, they are represented on this diagram. First, we start with the data. We know that we have more and more IoT and sensors that are used in our networks to try to understand what is happening there. So this is a vast amount of data that is there, and now we have the challenge to manage the quantity and the complexity of this information. There is also the risk to be flooded with this information and not really know what to do with it. This is where the second part, AI, is already there and will come more and more into play. So to help us to learn from this data, to understand the behavior, what we see in the data, how the networks and the infrastructure is behaving. Parallel to that, we have the rise of cloud solutions at a lot of different levels, from SaaS solution or infrastructure solution. This gives us the power to deploy this solution and also the scalability, like not to have to restart every time from scratch from one utility to the other. And let's say that the three main trends that we observe, they can help us for the fourth trend to foster the infrastructure transition or transformation that we need. Like, we know that digitalization is not going to be enough just to address the challenge that we have to face, the one I was mentioning at the beginning. We will also need to adapt the infrastructure, so it's not only about the digital part. One of the trends that we are seeing, especially for the sewer and stormwater management side, is the trend of decentralization. So the networks are changing. We are moving from very large centralized networks where we collect the entire water of the city, treat it, and release it then to the river or to the sea, to some more decentralized and hybrid infrastructure with a combination of underground centralized network and superficial nature-based solutions or decentralized grid infrastructures. And finally, water is, let's say, one of the infrastructures in the city, one of the silos, if we could say, that we need to integrate with other services or other infrastructures. So we have the road, we have the energy, we have the gas, we have the other urban services. And also there is a lot of potential if we start sharing the water data with these other infrastructures or using data from the other infrastructures to improve the management of our water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructures. So I'm not going to go in detail for all these elements. I will pick only three of them. And I will start with AI. So AI can bring a lot of things in the water or in the sewer sectors. As I said before, it can help to better understand what is happening, which is already a good start, but it can also help to better planning, operational, strategic planning, to better control of the infrastructures, or simply warning or early warning when we have issues. And there are a lot of different applications. For example, for preventive maintenance, this is a topic that we are working a lot in Berlin. We are developing solutions that helps to predict the condition, the structural condition of the underground infrastructures. If we know only 10% of the condition of our pipes which are underground, we can use this data to create models that help us to predict the condition of the remaining part of the city. And then with this information, we know where we need to invest in priority to make the best out of the municipal budget that we will invest every year for infrastructure rehabilitation. And we can also know how this is going to change in the future. Are we investing enough to maintain the value and the function of infrastructures? How can we optimize that? So using the data and AI in this case, we have the possibility to control that better. There are a lot of different types of applications. Some of them have been mentioned before. And also the rise of AI application for cybersecurity. Like detection system that we were presenting before, we use the data and machine learning or different type of AI system to find out where we have issues, outliers, or anomalies. An interesting rise that we see also at the moment is generative AI. So it's not only about machine learning, prediction tool when we have input and try to predict the output. More and more, and also in our life, we see the rise of large language models like ChatGPT that could also play in the short and mid-term a role in the water sector. In particular related to unstructured data. So there are many studies that show that most of the data that we collect and that we store are actually unstructured. So it means they are audio, they are PDF. There is not a very clear standard or data model to represent the data, which means at the end it's very hard to use them. Maybe you can use them when you receive them and you see, okay, there is a problem there, or I have to contact one person. But then, since you don't have all the metadata and the structure to reuse them, they are not really useful to develop models. And our models are struggling with this data, or with this multimodality of the different sources of data. So this is where this LLM could help to try to create value from this unstructured data, and maybe to expand the model as we know them, like the more standard AI or machine learning model, by relying more on other sources and very different sources of data. Another element is the new type of model interactions, the fact that we can have a different way to connect with the models. We can use the voice to have the model respond to us. So we could imagine some totally different interactions which are less technical and maybe more intuitive to work with artificial intelligence or different type of models. So there are a lot of different risks that are associated to the rise of AI. For example, we have the vulnerability of the models to data poisoning, especially if we think that we are going to use more and more large language model for different types of application in our networks. What happens if the data are poisoned? What happens if we have bias that are involved in our data? And how can we detect that? There are a lot of different studies that found out that if the attacks are clever, the change can be so slow or the deviation can be so light that it's very hard to detect them. So if the model are black box and we don't really understand what is happening inside, how are we sure that we can rely on the performance and on the results that the model is giving, especially if we use the model to plan investment or to optimize the water quality, the water quantity, which are very critical services. And of course, we have this topic of explainability. The one issue that we might have with AI, even if the results can be outstanding and very useful for different tasks, it can be hard to explain exactly how it works. So it creates a lot of questions in terms of trustworthiness and explainability or accountability to the public for the decision we take based on these models. And the second element I wanted to mention is infrastructure transformation. I mentioned it a bit at the beginning. This is maybe more as an example for the sewer and stormwater infrastructures. We see a shift toward more decentralized infrastructures. So instead of having just the sewer networks, we rely more and more on audio-based solutions, on green roof, on infiltration. For the adaptability it brings, so we notice a bit the limit of the centralized networks. They are not able to take any type of rain that will come, so we will always have a storm event that will exceed the capacity of the system. These decentralized infrastructures have the adaptability. They have the multifunctionality. They bring other type of benefits of services, also in terms of urban planning. It can be just nice to have some more greener or more blue city, and they can bring the resilience characteristics that we don't have in centralized network. So this creates also a lot of new risks which are quite interesting to investigate. What does it mean for cybersecurity if our networks are more and more decentralized? If we start to deploy IoT in our cities to monitor the functioning of stormwater management systems, who is going to manage that? What are the new risks that it creates? Especially with the third point, if it's not only one water utility that's in charge for all these infrastructures, but if we start to delegate the management of stormwater to other entities, including the private or the building owners, which are building their own green roof on infiltration facilities. And also, if we start managing stormwater underground, it's not underground. So if we start to manipulate the functioning of these infrastructures, it can have a direct impact on the citizen or the people that live in the neighborhoods. So which kind of new issues or new risk this could create? Smart city, I will not really go into detail. I already mentioned a couple of points about it. Here what we see is this trend that we are more and more sharing data. We hear a lot about urban data platform where we collect data from the city to create new smart solutions. So for the water sector, it could be a solution that's use data from other sectors. I was talking before about the solution for rehabilitation planning. We could imagine in the future to share data between the streets, the gas, the sewer, the electricity, and to start planning together the investment. In Berlin, it's almost 900 million every year that is invested for infrastructure rehabilitation, and nobody is talking about where are the synergies and how can we optimize the activities that we have. So this is where also digitalization could help. But if we do that, we start sharing data, we create the risk of cascading failures. We have very different approaches, way of working. So it complicates, let's say, or it creates new connections between the infrastructures, which might also create some new risk. And this comes to the last slides, where it's a bit of a summary of the main research needs that we derive from, particular from one project where we investigated this point. Maybe just to mention two of them in the short time that I have. One important part is the AI part. So how are we going to develop AI system that we can trust? that really bring the performance and the reliability that we expect, not only in pilot projects, but really on the long term into the system of the utilities? And how can we make sure that there is no bias in them, that we can really trust the outcomes and that we cannot manipulate them? Then we have the topic of urban resilience or cascading effects, the resilience of critical infrastructures. If we start connecting the data because we find new application, we can use data from other infrastructures, some other services to improve what we are doing, which kind of new risk it creates. And what happens if there is an event, a threat that is happening on the drinking water network, which kind of impact it can have on the Strom network, on the electricity network, on the sewer network? How can we better predict that and anticipate it? And at the end, there is really the question on how we can develop this kind of solutions or address these issues not only in very large cities where there is maybe more research activities and bigger digital or cybersecurity team, but also develop solutions, including AI solutions that are applicable in mid-size or even in smaller utilities where there is not all the same capacity in terms of digital solution. Okay, thank you very much.